Hello everyone and welcome back to more Umineko. It is raining like hell outside, as you can hear. You can see in the background. Isn't that cool? That's a cool effect. I like that. Here we are back with more Umineko right now.
わしらも頭を冷やすべきとちゃうか。レシートの件は確かにお父さんの失踪を探る上で重要な手がかりになると思うで。警察が来たら話すといいやろ。
そうね。そう。レシートの一件でつい鬼の首を取ったような気持ちになっちゃったのね。確かに夏日姉さんだけを疑うのはフェアじゃないわ。私たちだって等しく疑わしい。でもね、バトラ君、レシートの話だけは本当よ。これ忘れないでね。そしてこれがどういう意味を持つか、もう一度よく考えてみてね。
Oh, looks like they planned on leaving parlor. They all stood up. It's the end. It's pointless for us to keep playing detectives.
結局私たちはこんな推理
I thought Aunt Leslie was talking there, but she
だって
wasn't.
どうせ警察
That
が
was just implying that she also
全
was
て明
leaving.
かしてくれるんですもん。
Planning on leaving. That's right. Even if we don't play this detective game, the typhoon will pass, hopefully. And when those lively seagulls return to the harbor, everything will settle itself. And the world will continue to spin. Think about it, this kind of crime is completely trivial. Is it really, though? It's a pretty big crime. It will definitely be resolved, even if we do nothing. Well, that's not technically true. When seagulls cry. Lots of crimes go unsolved,
こ
right?
れ以上、夏日姉さんも私の顔を見ていたくはないでしょ。私も同じよ。
Yeah. They were at odds with each other last
ゲ
episode.
ス
It
トハウ
was
スに帰らなくて済む
pretty
ようにっ
heated.
て客室を用意してくれたのよね。あそこはバスもトイレもあるし、鍵もチェーンもかかる。横になれるベッドもあるし、主人もマリアちゃんとチャンネル争いをせずにテレビを見ることができるわ。お好きになさるといいでしょう。でもくれぐれも用心を。ありがとう姉さん。そして余計なお世話よ。
Ooh.
姉さんはみんなの監視をよろしくね。犯人はこの中に必ずいるんだから。そして姉さんも自分が監視をされていることをお忘れなく。捨て台詞はそれで十分ですか。ええ、十分よ。じゃあね、夏日姉さん。源氏さん、夕食になったら呼んでね。それまでチェーンをかけて閉じこもってるわ。
Someone's gonna go missing.
かの
I have a
お
feeling.
二人を客室までお送りを。結構よ。送り狼なんて嫌だもの。むしろ私たちが部屋に行くまで誰もこの部屋を出ないでくれる方が安心よ。ジョージ行くわよ。
僕はここでみんなといるよ。
ジョージ、
Ooh.
この部屋に犯人
Find
がい
his
るのよ。
mother.
そんなところにいるつもり？
この部屋を出るということは親族の誰かを疑うのと同じことだよ。
I wonder if George is so smart. Can you imagine going home with her, like on your report card, and you get like a B? She would absolutely go off on
信
you.
じない。
ジョージ、あなたからも言ってやってよ。
ジョージももう一人前の男や。そのジョージの仁義がこの部屋から出えへん
Even Hideyoshi's kind of sticking up for George, which is nice to see, considering that's not his actual dad. Right? I don't think so. Aunt Ava and Uncle Hideyoshi left. The only voice that called after them was the sound of the rain. I think that's his stepdad. Maybe I'm wrong though. I'm misremembering. Laura was being buried underneath the savage atmosphere. I looked at the clock. I was surprised to find that it was already evening. Had we really spent that much time worrying about needless things, talking with each other, fighting with each other? Feeling bored, I started scratching at my head when Marie and I made eye contact. I was a little surprised since I thought she was completely immersed in the television.
今なら信じるぜ。
Which?
手紙も殺人もすべて
does believe.
ベアトリーチェの仕業だ。いや、むしろ頼むからそうだと名乗り出てほしいぜ。19人目の仕業ってことにさせてくれ。じゃなきゃ。
Yeah.
俺た
He'd
ち
rather
18
have it be
人は
that
いつ
than
までも互
have
いを
someone
疑
like
い合わなくちゃならね
close to him betray everyone.
え。19人目の存在を信じる
Yeah,
方が
it definitely
マシ
is
さ。
the better outcome.
扉も窓も開けずにじいさまを外へ連れ出すなんて。ベアトリーチェならお茶の子さいさいなんだろう。
Hurry after taking a single short breath, hung her head, and then raised her face again. Uh-oh, she changed. I think. Yep.
そうだよ。魔女の前に扉の鍵なんて何の役にも立たないんだよ。ベアトリーチェは72柱のすべてに精通する。
Huh, I thought there'd be more.
33位のガープは望む相手を望む場所へ瞬時に運ぶ力を与えるし、彼女にとってどのような密室に閉じこもった人間だろうと
Wait, hang on.
連れ出すことは難しいことでも
Is
何で
that
も
a
ないんだ
real
よ。
demon? Hang on, let me check. Gap is a demon. Carved in demonological grimoires, such as the Lesser Cube Solomon. Gap is a prince in human form who incites love. He also provides medical care for women, transforms them to make it easier to get a lover, renders them infertile, and rules 25 legions of spirits. Trying to... Yeah, one of the things is, and carry men between kingdoms. I'm guessing that's what they're referring to. Isn't that cool? It's like real stuff.
頼むから。もしまだ事件を起こす気なら、絶対に人間には無理なことをして、俺に19人目を、いや、魔女の存在を信じ
Did
さ
you
せ
ever
て
thought
く
one
れ。
person, like, carried and brutally killed, like,
あっ
6
たら伝
people
えておくよ。
in, like, one night? That's a lot. For any of those people. Crap. Hasn't made sense for a while now. Just when I want to believe in the 19th person, I deny it. Just when I want to believe there are only 18 people, I deny that too. What do I believe in? Even though I want there to be more than just the 18 people here, I can't accept the existence of that 19th person. In short, even though there are more than 18 people, there are less than 19 people. The number of people in this mansion is 19 is greater than X is greater than 18, so the number of people can't be represented by an integer. However, it's impossible for there to be anything after the decimal point. You should be able to show the number of people with anything but an integer. Like, you can't have half a person, right? I mean, unless you're slave owners. And yet 19 times X, or 19, it's no wonder. The ninth brother was something that can be seen. That's why when you could only write the number of people as an integer, you couldn't see that person. That witch cannot be seen. Because Beatrice has no body. Nobody to love. She's invisible. Is there a 19th person or not? Does the witch exist? Not. 19 is greater than X is greater than 18. The witch exists somewhere in that X. Oh, that would have been it. That's fine. It is 7 o'clock. The two who are close. The comfortable atmosphere continued even after those two left. The thick, with the idea that was symbolizing the culprit's identity would be the same as deciding who to suspect. They began to feel like discussion of the case was itself taboo. So no one mentioned the case, at least out loud. However, those whose thoughts were filled with our minds. All that we couldn't say aloud made our heads feel like they were going to explode. So at least on the outside, the parlor had once again regained its calm mood. Everything was left unsettled.
少しだけ雨足が弱まった気がするね。
まだいっぱい降ってるよ。おー。
仮にやんだって、この島には船がねえんだしな。船が明日すぐに来てくれる。
No, we could leave it if we wanted to.
洋館バカンさんもうお腹いっぱいだぜ。
Tell me about it.
母さん、明日
There we go.
船はいつ来るのかな。
本来なら 帰りの船は今日の3時に来てくれることになっていました。先方も台風が過ぎてから出直すと電話をしてくれたでしょうが、あいにく電話は普通ですから。でも向こうも子供の使いではありません。客人の方々の送迎目的だと教えてありますから、おそらく明日の朝一番で、多分9時頃に来てくれるでしょう。
It was completely black outside. When I looked at the clock, I realized that it was just past 7 o'clock. I was starting to get hungry. In the kitchen, Kumasawa was cooking enthusiastically. He had laid out a variety of dishes, and while they didn't match the level of Goda's artful cooking, they were still quite gorgeous. It was an act of kindness from Kumasawa, who was trying to enliven everyone's low spirits with some food. Kumasawa wasn't nearly as talented as a professional cook like Goda, but she was far from unskilled. Contrary, since she'd been brought up in a fishing village, the simple food she created was something highly praised. Sometimes highly praised. Kanan arranged the food Kumasawa had finished trading on plates to her direction. Kanan also helped in the kitchen sometimes, but since he was rarely placed in that role, it was really awkward, even though he tried his best. Self-conscious about the fact that he couldn't cleverly arrange the food, Kanan's expression darkened slightly. Kumasawa smiled as though everything was fine. I don't think they're really gonna care.
綺麗に盛り付けられてますよ。カノン君もお上手ですよ。
シャノン姉さんだったらもっと綺麗に。
Kanan stopped arranging the food for a bit and hung it. Kanan was the one who always assisted Kumasawa in her cooking. Tonight, Kanan was doing it instead. And as he remembered Shannon's face in her brutal end, Genji spoke kindly to Kanan as he advanced upon. Nanja has escaped from the parlor once the mood had grown sour, and Genji had become his opponent in a game of chess upon Nanja's.
はい、今は忘れます。
As they're playing chess over there while these people were working hard. Genji purposely refrained from facing Kanan as he spoke. He did so because he understood that it might make things tougher on Kanan if he noticed that someone was looking at his eyes. Genjo also understood that and held back any thoughtless words.
金蔵さんもどこへ行かれたんでしょうな。ご無事だといいのですが。
わかりません。ただ、すべては親方様が望まれ、仕組まれたことのように思っています。それを邪推することは、親方様にお仕えする家具には過ぎたことです。
源氏さんは怖くないのですか？私には今夜まだ何か良くないことが起こるような気がして怖いのです。
怖いことなど何も。私はただ
Man, Genji's such a Chad. Nanja sighed through his nose and made a carefully considered move. Like, he doesn't care. He's like, I'm here to do my job. And that Nanja was very slightly dubious. Could Genji possibly be thinking that he left out of this? Couldn't even imagine what was happening inside this mansion. They definitely could deny the possibility that Kinzo has devised something. Like in this island of chess, Kinzo had opened the game, and as a result, 6 pieces had been. Could it be that Genji was calm because he believed he alone was on the outside of the chessboard? Or safe? Anjo thought about it. Everyone just a piece on this chessboard lined up without any exception? Wasn't even Genji who had gained more of Kinzo's trust than anyone. Oh. Confident of his position as Kinzo's only close friend. Just another one of the pieces laid out on the chessboard?
Genji-san, 私は今夜が本当に怖いのです。無事に明日の朝を迎えられることを心より願っています。
Guest room Ava and Hideyoshi moved into had originally been built to house guests before the guest house's construction. So until a few years ago, they stayed in these rooms every family conference and were very familiar with them. This room was just like a room at a hotel with a bedroom and a bathroom. So even though they were still shut in, it was far more comfortable than just the parlor.
やっぱり家族だけだとリラックスできるな。他のみんなも客室にこもって鍵をかけてりゃええんや。
夏日姉さんが客間を出るなって威張り散らしてるんだもん。誰も口答えなんてできないでしょ。あの人、ずーっと冷や飯を食ってきたから、兄さんが死んでやっと天下が来たって張り切ってんのよ。
Does she really have any power though?
まったく、ずうずうしいったらあるしな。
まあ、そう
She's not even an heir.
夏日さんもあれで結構頑張っとるんやで。お前もそう突っかからんでもええやないか。さっきのレシートの件もあそこまでは言い過ぎやで。
だってあそこで言わなかったらもう言うタイミングがないんだもん。
Ava, sulking cutely and looking at the television, sat along Hideyoshi, who was lying on the bed.
でも、こうして二人きりになるのはずいぶん久しぶりよね。
そうやな。
Please don't bone.
思え
Come
ば
on, not the
わし
time.
もお前も老けたもんや。ジョージが生まれてから何もかもがあっという間や。
本当にあっ
It
と。
really, when you get older, time really does fly. Like that is, people say it, but it is absolutely true. It's crazy how fast the years go. Ava's eyes looked like they were staring off into the distance. Yes, she had thought of it as a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Her older brother Kraus had been unable to father a child for quite some time. Years passed after his marriage to Natsui without any signs of pregnancy. Did not please Kinzo at all. He wants an heir. Ava herself had thought that since her name would be moved outside the Ushiromiya register when she got married anyway, it didn't matter whether their successor to the headship was born or not. And then one day, she had a heavenly revelation. Or maybe it was the whisperings of the devil that she had listened to. She could give birth to a successor first. Wouldn't she be able to remain in the Ushiromiya register? Things went well. Might she have a chance to inherit the Ushiromiya family herself? When she proposed this to Hideyoshi, he had approved of it instantly. It wasn't because Hideyoshi had also agreed his thoughts. Hideyoshi seems like a cool guy. For Hideyoshi, who had no close relatives, it was a chance for him to feel once more the long-forgotten thing, family. So when they got married, he hadn't fussed over which last name they were to keep. They had agreed to have his name entered in the Ushiromiya family register. It hadn't been easy to persuade Kinzo, but as his daughter, Ava knew Kinzo's personality well. So by choosing the time when Kinzo was most dissatisfied with Natsui, when she couldn't get pregnant, she was magnificently able to make him accept Hideyoshi as an adopted son-in-law. Looking at Hideyoshi, who had achieved success after starting from nothing, Kinzo might have seen a little bit of himself. He quickly grew to like Hideyoshi and approved his transfer into the Ushiromiya register. George would eventually become the successor to the Ushiromiya family. They had raised him strictly with that purpose in mind. He had been worth their while and had grown into a fabulous young man who wouldn't disappoint no matter where he went. That's why he had not been permitted to fall in love with a servant like Shannon. So when she learned that Shannon was dead and the engagement was now valid, though part of her had still been shocked by the gruesome crime, part of her had also been relieved that her dear George wouldn't be stolen by some servant girl. Damn.
私、クラウス兄さんのことが昔から嫌いだったわ。偉そうで威張ってて、自分がやがては当主になるのだと自慢してて。だから、 それに一矢報いてやりたかった。でもそれは子供の頃の感情なのよ。でもその感情は結局自分の人生のほとんどを支配した。それだけならまだいい。その感情はあなたやジョージまで巻き込んで振り回してしまった。
エヴァ、備え自分を責めるな。
Hideyoshi got up and held Ava's shoulder. You could feel a warm understanding from him.
わしはな、自分の人生はもうとっくに折り返しに入っとる。でもな、今日までの生活を後悔したことは一度もないで。一度もや。エヴァと一緒で他の男どもじゃ味わえん楽しい人生になったと思っとる。戦争で身寄りを失ったわしにもう一度家族のぬくもりを教えてくれた。だから後宮の家には感謝しとるし、わしの唯一の家だと思っとる。わしとお前が歩んできた人生にな、無駄なことなんか何もなかった。今日までほんまに楽しい人生やったで。
ありがとう、あなた。
Ava hung her head, burying her face in Hideyoshi's chest. Probably no one in the parlor could even imagine that this side of Ava actually existed.
感謝するのはわしや。今日までお前と一緒にいて後悔した日なんてあらへん。
So sweet.
私もよ。あなたと一緒になれてよかった。
ジョージももう立派な大人や。わしが見張ってなくてもしっかり仕事ができる一人前や。で、正月あたりをのんびりモルジブあたりで過ごさんか。わしら二人水入らずや。
いやよ。毎年年賀状の返礼で寝る暇もないとか言ってるじゃない。
次の正月だけはなしや。年賀状はみん黙って下のお年玉くじだけチェックするんや。
Of course, gotta
今
check
年は
that.
カラーテレビくらい当てたいで。
やだ。
Gotta remember, this was back in the 80s.
モルジブでお年玉くじのチェックなんて
Color
したくない
TV was a big deal.
じゃあそいつもなしや。水入らずのんびりで、ジョージが生まれる直前の新婚時代の続きをちょいとしてみんか。
うん、それならいいわね。
モルジブはええとこらしいで。なんもない島に美しいサンゴ礁と水上コテージが並んでてな。
新婚時代の続きっていつからなの？
仕事納めしたらすぐや。旅行店に聞いてみんとわからんが、多分大晦日前には。
いや、今すぐがいい。
Ava nagged at his lips in a peevish, yet flirtatious manner. The only sounds that filled the room were the distant voice of the announcer on the news, which Hideyoshi had left on, and the obnoxious pounding of the rain against the window. There was a knock at the door, and Genji entered.
奥様、お夕食の準備が整いました。
Food. Oh, I'm hungry.
お食事はまたこちらでよろしいですか？
ええ、ここへ運ばせなさい。
What'd you bring?
南條先生はまだ厨房にいるのですか？
Drink.
はい。次の一手を熟考したいとおっしゃっております。ご安心を。他の使用人たちとご一緒です。
源氏さんはじい様の相手ができるくらいチェスが強いもんな。南條先生よりも強いらしいぜ。
そうなんだ。昔相手をしてもらったことがあるけど、あれは勝たせてくれたのかな。
マリア、もうすぐ飯だそうだぜ。しかしよく一日中テレビを見ていて飽きないな。
Maria's hungry. She's eating for two.
いつもテレビいっぱい見てるから平気。
マリアちゃんはテレビっ子なんだね。
食事だから机の上を片付けないとダメだぜ。
Earlier, we had torn several pages out of Maria's notebook, and there was now a mess where everyone had been drawing together. Jessica began cleaning that up quickly. So everyone here can really draw. I never guessed.
Genji, エヴァさんたちにもせめて食事くらい一緒にしないかとお声をかけなさい。どうせ断るでしょうが。
I have a feeling they're dead.
かしこまりました。
I don't know why.
お
I
父
have a
様の
bad
次はエ
feeling.
ヴァさんですか。つくづく後宮家の食卓には全員が揃いませんね。
Natsui felt her headache start throbbing again and lightly held her temples. Distance from the kitchen to the parlor wasn't that great, so Genji had gone and come back by himself, but the guest room was a little farther away. Natsui had warned him to avoid being alone whenever possible. And just now, Najo had admonished him, saying it'd be better if he had held a little more concern for his safety. Kanon accompanied Genji, and the two of them went to visit Eva and Hideyoshi in their guest room. Genji knocked on the door.
Eva-sama, Hideyoshi-sama, お夕食の準備が整いました。
He waited a short while for them to come out, but there was no response.
Genji-sama, これは
Ken had pointed under the door. A Western-style envelope had been inserted under it. Under I. Normally, when something was inserted this way, it'd be interpreted as a message from someone outside to someone in the room. Though since this might be a private note meant for Eva and Hideyoshi, it was not something that Ken and Genji were supposed to take interest in. But how could you not? But this Western envelope has the seal. One of Kinzo's, with the same kind as the one that Maria had taken out last night and surprised everyone with. Even though this is one of Kinzo's envelopes, the letter Maria read aloud the previous night hadn't come from Kinzo. Genji continued knocking a little harder and called out in a loud voice.
Eva-sama! Eva-sama! Genji でございます。いらっしゃいますか？お返事をお願いいたします。Eva-sama!
But there was no response from the inside. Sometimes when the servants went to call some guests for a meal, the guests would be sleeping so deeply that they wouldn't wake up. Times like that, the servants would stick a letter in the door to show that it was time to come out and leave the guest be. But despite that, Genji beat even harder on the door and called out Ava's name. However, there was no answer. Kanon stuck his ear up to the door, held his breath, and listened for any sounds coming from the inside.
テレビの音らしきものが。でも気配が感じられません。お部屋は空っぽかも。
Genji took out a handkerchief and, careful not to touch it with his bare hands, gently pulled out the envelope that had been stuck under the door. It was sealed with a deep red sealing wax. Without a doubt, the mark on that sealing wax had come from the Ushiromiya family head's ring.
Eva-sama! Eva-sama! どうかお返事を。もうお部屋にはいらっしゃいませんか?
But there was still no answer. There was a chance that those two were aimlessly walking around the mansion. This was the home Ava had grown up in. There was plenty of reason to think that she'd gone out on a casual stroll. Genji groped around in his pocket and pulled out a bundle of keys, which contained the key that would open the guest room.
Genji-sama!
Kanon also understood what this meant. He would sometimes unlock the doors so they could go in and do things like make the beds, but only after they made sure the guests were out. To unlock the door for any other reason, especially to do so when there was a chance the guest hadn't given permission and might still be in there, was an action unbecoming of a servant. These are unbecoming times. I think it's fair. But Genji had decided. The only problem had been that this knock hadn't received a reply, he wouldn't have gone this far. But the envelope under the door was doubtlessly one of Kinzo's or rather, one of the Western envelopes the Ushiromiya family had. After last night, the sender of this envelope could be someone other than Kinzo. If this letter had been sent by someone else... After giving that final notice, Genji stuck one of the keys from the bundle into the keyhole. It's gonna be... What's it gonna be? Oh my god, the sound of door unlocking. After slowly turning the knob, he started opening the door. What's it gonna be like? Chuck, come back next time. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. We're gonna see it right now. Light seeped through the crack of the door. Were they in the room? Or had they forgotten to turn out the lights? With the sound of the door chain being pulled tight. The chain had been secured. The chain couldn't be secured from the outside. The house provider proved that they were in the room. The sound of the voices on the TV seeped out of the room. The lights, the chain, and the TV. All these things made it clear they were in the room. But there was no sign of them. Genji called to Ava once again through the crack of the door. There was no answer.
Genji-sama, ikaga shimasu ka?
Break it down. As part of their job, the servants were able to unlock almost any lock in the mansion. But they had no way to open a door with a chain. The only way to get by the chain was to cut it. That was certainly not permitted as part of the servants' usual work. Creepy chill had already rushed up their backs. Kennen held his breath again and tried to sense someone through the door, but even so, he was not able to sense anyone. You like do it, cut it. As Kennen hurried away to get a cutting tool, Genji called him to a stop. It looked like Kennen was wondering why he had to do something so troublesome in the middle of this urgent situation. Question, are there windows? Could have checked through the window. Maybe if the blinds up though. He didn't care about himself, but in the worst case scenario, he didn't want anything to happen to Kennen. In the kitchen, Kimosawa was piling food on the serving tray. Nanjo was waiting for Genji, apparently wanting to show him a move he'd finally thought up that might turn the tables on him. But Genji's appearance immediately told him that something was wrong. Genji took Nanjo, who still didn't know what was going on, and quickly left the kitchen.
Kumasawa-san, 申し訳ありませんが、僕と一緒に来てください。
何があったんですか、カノンさん。
Kumasawa said almost the exact same thing as Nanjo, unable to take in the situation and chase after Kennen, who had flown out into the hallway. Taking Kumasawa with him, Kennen went to a storage room and looked through the tools placed in toolboxes and hanging all over the walls. Trying to find something that could be used to cut the chain.
何を探してるんですか？私も手伝いますよ。
ドアチェーンを切断するんです。大きめの番線カッターはどこだっけ？
ドアチェーンを？どうしてそんなことをするんですか？
エヴァ様たちのお部屋にチェーンが中にいらっしゃるはずなのに、お声をかけても返事がないんです。
Kumasawa was sometime to figure out how cutting the chain and Ava and Hideyoshi not answering were connected, but she did realize that this was an urgent situation.
これなら多分。
Kennen took down a very large wire cutter that had been hanging on the wall. was called a cutter, but maybe it'd be easier to understand if we said it was shaped like a large pair of pliers. And remember once being warned that this dangerous tool could easily cut through one of your fingers. Yes, they are very sharp and very dangerous. Ken took that and rushed up the stairs. He already knew instinctively. He should fight for every minute, every second to open it quickly. Or perhaps, already.
待ってください、カノンさん。
早く!
Kumasawa eventually caught up with him, gasping for breath with both hands on her. When Kanon changed his grip on the wire cutters and looked up at the door, he let out an ah, struck speechless. What? Hell's Halls. What a fitting name. Kumasawa screamed weakly. It was no surprise. That was no surprise because right there on the door, just like the magic circle that had been drawn on the shutter of the Rose Garden storehouse, there was another eerie shape drawn with blood-like paint. It's blood. However, it would be odd to call this one a magic circle. Like a gateway. Because unlike what most people would expect, it wasn't a circle with shapes drawn inside of it. A slightly more complicated geometrical shape. However, the strange characters filling in the gaps, which weren't from the alphabet, were the same kind as the ones the magic circle letter. But the thing that Kanon struck speechless wasn't how eerie the magic circle was. It was that something like this hadn't been here a short while ago. First, he'd taken a trip back to the kitchen. After that, he'd gone to the storage room to grab a tool and headed right back. Put those together, and it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. How could someone add something this creepy during that period of time? And as though it had just been drawn, almost like the door itself was bleeding, several unsettling vertical red lines slowly dripped down, being longer and longer. Kumasawa's knees gave way, and she sank down on the spot. Kumasawa hadn't done this first, and Kanon surely would have wanted to.
Beatrice-sama.
ベアトリーチェ様の仕業ですよ。恐ろしや恐ろしや。
Kanon gulped, readied the wire cutter, and approached the door. He didn't want to get close to this disturbing magic circle, and he didn't really want to touch the steadily dripping substance that looked like blood. But if he didn't get close, he wouldn't be able to cut the chain. Fighting this cold feeling, he gulped again, and after gathering his courage, he went even closer, putting the wire cutter up against the chain. He then pressed with all of his strength, and managed to cut through the chain far more easily than he anticipated. The chain fell into two separate parts, which continued to clang as they slid back and forth.
カノンさん、足元に封筒が。しかもこれは親方様のもの。
The Kumasawa also noticed the western envelope at the bottom of the door. That the sealing wax had been sealed with the head. Kanon hesitated for just a second over whether he should open the letter first or check inside the room. He eventually decided on fulfilling his original. Pulled a handkerchief out of his pocket. That was how he went to the door for evidence. Worst fears were realized. The police would want to investigate this room too. He slowly pushed the door open. He was able to more clearly hear the sound of the television, which had been seeping out faintly this whole time.
Eva-sama.
Eva was lying face up on the bed. Bed with her still on. Masawa had fearfully entered Kanon, hiding behind her back, screamed a short eek again when she saw Eva like that. Eva's shoes had been first part of her that Cannon had seen said the oddness of wearing shoes in bed was the first thing to strike him. But when Ava's head shifted into his line of sight, Cannon couldn't help but let out a short scream like Kumasawa. Right in the middle of Ava's forehead, something was growing there? No. Right in the center of her forehead was an old-fashioned knife or some kind of weapon-like. It was sticking out. The base of where it was stuck in blood dripped down, staining the sheets on the other side bright red. Kumasawa's knees gave way once more and she sank down on the floor. Her mouth kept flapping open and closed, but she couldn't even scream. Ava was dead. Some kind of weapon sticking out of her forehead. Both eyes were open wide, and the image of the person who killed her must have been burned into them. The only mouth capable of naming that person had been shut for all eternity. And though her forehead was the last place they wanted to look, they couldn't tear their eyes from it. Right there, the weapon was stuck into Ava's forehead, standing almost perfectly upright. On the handle was a complicated design that you wouldn't expect to see on an ordinary weapon. That thing could be summed up with the word it was a vulgar object with a design that might have been of some demon. It was on top of her bed, but the other bed was empty. Where was Hideyoshi? Taking a backward glance at Kumasawa, still on her knees and stupefied, he checked the bathroom just in case. At the moment he opened the door, he was greeted by steam and the sound of the shower. The bathroom was part of the same familiar style as most hotel bathrooms. Taking a shower, waterproof curtains just keep water from falling out. Holy shit. Waterproof curtain was half open. Lying tumbled down in the bathtub was Hideyoshi, completely naked, with both eyes open. And pointing right at Cannon, just like Ava, a weapon with a demon-like design was stuck into his forehead. His head had been under the shower's hot water this whole time. His face wasn't half covered and filthy with blood like Ava's had been. But the sight of him dead while still taking a shower was tragic enough. Just then they heard Natsui's voice coming from the hall. Oh shit. He's probably coming with Genji. Trust me, that's the least of your worries. All evidence. All evidence.
わざわざ手紙を残すくらいです。どうせ指紋など残っています。
As Natsui said that, she picked up the envelope. Before checking its contents, she entered the room herself, where she found Ava dead.
Eva-san! 奥様、こちらには秀吉様も。
これはむごいですな。
カノ、シャワーを止めてあげます。気の毒に程があります。
はい。
Johnny gripped his handkerchief and twisted the valve, turning off the shower. The bathtub, a small jar of body soap, had fallen with its cap off. It looked like he'd been attacked while taking a shower. There was still a small splash of blood clinging to the white bathtub. The combination of red and white made a horrible contrast.
Nanjo sensei. わかったな。市販は出とらんな。死後硬直も始まっとらん。おそらく殺されてから1時間経ったかどうかというところだろう。しかしこのような柄の短い凶器で頭蓋骨を考えられん。
Time to check their pulse and their pupils, making certain of their deaths before. As Kennen watched this business-like treatment, he thought. Couldn't you tell at a glance that they're dead without doing all that? Ninja thought about removing the weapon, but then decided it'd be better to preserve the scene and hand it over to the police, so he left it alone. The close inspection of the base showed that it didn't have a blade. In fact, it was more conical than blade-shaped. You noticed that rather than a knife, it was more like a short-handled spear, with a shape better suited for thrusting than slicing. Rather than a short spear, you might call it a thick ice pick. At any rate, after looking at the scene, no further words were needed to describe what sort of terrible purpose such eerily designed weapons were originally made for. Nor was it necessary to explain how they carried out their function. Natsui, hoping to escape the repulsive steam filling the bathroom as soon as she could, covered her mouth with a handkerchief and dashed from the room. Just viewing their gruesome bodies for an instant had been enough to burn the image into her eyes. If she looked any longer, that image would surely remain in her vision for all eternity. Rising urge to vomit was exactly the same feeling she had that morning at the garden storehouse. For a while, Natsui couldn't help but stand with her back facing the guest room, fighting back that sickness in her stomach. Man, George is gonna flip.
見せられませんとも。両親のこんなむごい姿をとてもジョージさんには。
You gotta figure out eventually. They could tell that those fiercely raging footsteps in the hallway belonged to George, even before he came dashing into the room. George and the other children had been waiting in the parlor. However, when they saw Genji speak to Natsui, when they saw her turn pale and fly out of the parlor, they felt a sense of foreboding. When they saw that a large group of people gathered around the guest room, were sure of it.
Tosa! Tosa! なんだよこれまた魔法陣かよ
エヴァおばさんたちは無事なんだよなおいカノ君これは何の騒ぎなんだバトラ様
That's some bad news. Kenna didn't have to say anything. George would scream after he ran into the room, told them everything they needed to know. Natsui touches George's shoulder with her hand, but he violently shook her arm. George fell over beside Ava and buried his face in the bed in front of his mother's face, wailing. He pounded on the bed with his fist over and over again. Battler had his back against the wall of the hallway, covering his eyes with his right hand without restraint. Of course, it's sad whenever anyone dies, no matter who it is. But the battler, those left alone by the deaths of others, were far more worthy of pity. Everyone here now had lost someone close to them. George wasn't the only one to be pitied. However, George's pain was far greater than anyone else's.
兄貴にとってはずっと未来の話で、しかもそいつは一つずつ順番に訪れるべきもんじゃねえかよ。無ごすぎるぜ。やろうやろう。少しは人の情けってもんがねえのかよ。
おう、バトラ、泣かない泣かない。
I'm gonna try to comfort Battler in a mechanical sounding voice. Battler violently wiped his tears.
くそ、もう流さねえぜ。悔しい涙も悲しみの涙ももう二度と流さねえぜ。全然ダメだ。俺たちは魔女様に爪を食らってるわけだ。主勢一方ってわけだ。そりゃダメだぜ。全然ダメだ。チェス盤がひっくり返っちまうぜ。野郎は俺たち羊が明日まで逃げる手段もなく怯えてるだけだろうと思ってるだろうよ。だからひっくり返すぜ。明日までこの島から逃げられねえのは野郎も同じだ。しょんべんちびりそうになりながら逃げ隠れするのは俺たちじゃねえ。野郎の方だ。暴いてやるぜ。必ずな。明日までに。いや明日なんか待たねえ。今夜だ。今夜中にその胸ぐらを掴み上げてやら。